Whenever you are.
Special edition Hurricanes Live right here at the Voice for College Football. We appreciate you being here. We got Miami Flo here, joined us last week, and so glad to have him back. What's going on today, man?
Just another great Friday. I'm excited to get through another week closer to football, and just happy to be on here.
We'll take these comments and questions, folks. Leave them in the chat. We appreciate your contributions as well. Also, keep in mind the Amazon links in the description section of all the videos, both the live videos and the recorded videos. The deal there is that is the one way you can contribute here at the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. Just shop on Amazon using our link, and you help us grow the channel. It's transparent to you, doesn't change your shopping experience in any way. Let me ask you this. We've got ACC kickoff coming this week in Charlotte. I assume it's in Charlotte. It usually is, or almost always is. So it's one thing. So, for example, I went to Big Ten Media Days last year. I covered the SEC Media Days for 6 or 7 straight years, and you can only get so much access. It's great to be there, but you get to ask the one question. Maybe there's like 100 plus. At the formal podium speech, there's like 6 or 7 questions. So you've got about a 5% chance of asking a question there. And then you've got the scrum at the side session. And again, especially last year, if it's Ryan Day or Jim Harbaugh, there's 100 media around him and you've got a shot. So for me to get in my 5 or 6 questions, I was pleased with that last year. However, let's make it a little more fantasy land that you get to sit down with Mario Cristobal and have a real talk with him. It's not buttoned up, politically correct. Got to ask him. No, you get to have a real conversation, and he knows nobody's going to hear any of this.
Okay.
It's just you and him at lunch, having a drink, whatever, and you get to talk to him. What are you asking Mario Cristobal?
Wow. That's a great question. And that's like a dream, if I could get him off the record, that would just be, I think, like a miracle. For me, first one I would want to know 100%. I've already thought about this a million times is what were your honest to God, off the record thoughts when you said, I want to come back, and you saw the state of what the program really was like that you were coming back to. Like I'm talking the administration, the actual facilities, the culture, the money that was actually being invested before you came, right? Because I have to think he must have been extremely shocked and disappointed. And I'd have to think it'd be way worse than he thought it was. Because you can see from the outside. And then, of course, he still this is where he's from. I'm sure he had contacts, but I've heard rumblings that it shocked him. It really shocked him how much the rebuild was really going to have to be. And I would love to get his words, just off the record, like you said, because he could be candid on how bad the shape of the program, how bad it was compared to what he thought because he was here, he played here, he coached here, he grew up here. That would be my first question to him. Because I think you'd get a real direct, probably blunt, shocking answer.
And that's a great way to take the conversation, because I got to admit that I'm a little hard on him because I've looked at it like this. I understand that he has upgraded the recruiting. I understand that he has a vision for this program. And as our buddy Cam Underwood likes to say, he tore down the structure. He tore it down. And he's just starting to, fill the basement, and he's bringing it up from the very bottom. But at the same time, I look at it like this, and you brought up a lot of other components to it that are important, because I've looked at it as simply he inherited a roster that was pretty much a top 15 roster in terms of recruiting rankings, and they didn't have many losses. This is really at the outset of the portal, right when it was starting to kick into gear. So for all the things that we could complain about and have justifiable criticism of Manny Diaz, he did recruit rather well, not at Mario's standard, but recruited rather well. And he was given a fairly decent roster, and he's had these 5-7 and 7-6 seasons against fairly weak schedules with a decent roster.
I'm going to push back a little bit on that, because I feel that if you look at the last 15 to 20 years, Miami's consistently recruited in the top 15, even maybe top 20. And in the ACC, 85 to 90% of the time we've stepped on the field, we've had a better or more talented roster. The issue here has been in the internal development, the internal commitment financially. The culture was atrocious. I knew things that were going on with the team in the locker room that I was in shock. Being an old school, that I'm not going to name any coaches, but they were allowing to go down. So I guess on one end, from a talent, just raw talent, recruiting, I agree with you, but they never were developed here. And the culture was so bad. I feel that I know that this was said, and I'm not going to quote him, but I'll just say, I know this was said when he came back. He was shocked that the indoor facility that was built was only built 70 yards. He was like, he just didn't, he couldn't fathom that. Like, why did you even build this if you're only gonna have a 70-yard field? Just, that's a small thing, but it was like 25 of those things, that were just, he was just so confused. Like, why would you even do this? At the end of the day. So I guess, on one end, talent-wise, yeah. I mean, in the ACC, the ACC hasn't been strong other than like 2 or 3 teams, historically in the last, 15, 20 years. But we were a mess. I mean, I call it how I see it, a mess, just a complete mess. You can have the shiny toy all you want, but if it doesn't, like I said the other day on the show, I said, I felt like we were going out and getting the car that had a beautiful paint job, rims, tinted windows, a beautiful stereo, but we didn't even check under the hood. We didn't know if the transmission worked. We didn't care if it had a carburetor, but it looked nice. And we had a lot of that without any substance, and I think Mario, what he's been doing, and I don't think we're, I think we're still a year or 2 away from really having the roster that he would like, but there's some substance coming into the program. There's like real, it's not the paint that chips, it's a solid foundation, but we'll see. I mean, you still have to coach and stuff like that, but that would be my first question for sure, because I think he would literally be like, it was embarrassment.
So if you take Clemson off the board for sure in terms of recruiting, Florida State as well, because I'm going to guess that their recruiting, I guess, was slightly better during the years that Manny Diaz, and maybe even if you go back to Mark Richt, maybe not. I think it's pretty close. So you're talking about, like, if you take the better programs other than those in the ACC, like NC State, North Carolina, they're recruiting in the 20s and 30s, that you're saying with a really good head coach who's put together a good staff, who's given support, who has the facilities, who has the structure in place, not the constant change of having to replace the last coach who replaced the last coach who replaced the last coach and all that, that you can outplay a team that's maybe consistently 15 spots higher in the recruiting rankings.
I 100% think that, and I can give you several examples, not just in the ACC, but across the board. I believe coaching and culture are massive in college football, unless you're talking about the top 6 teams in the country. Because then, I mean, you can play against Georgia, and Georgia can come in with their D- game, and you still have to play your A+ game most of the time just to make it competitive, right? But I talk about coaches like Braum that's at Louisville now. Look what he's done with a lot less, just because he's a good coach and the culture was good, right? Mac Brown at North Carolina, say what you want about that he's older or whatnot, he runs a real respectable program. He puts guys in the NFL every single year. And it's just guys that maybe didn't get the classes that we were to get, but just did a lot more with it. And for me, this is just my personal opinion from what I saw. The separation that I saw in college football between the Canes, from what they were to what they became, like up until right now, really, to be honest, is the financial commitment from the inside wasn't there. So you got those type of coaches. You got those type of things happening when you don't have that type of financial commitment. And then everybody else was spending money. This is before, and I'm talking before NIL and before the transfer portal boom. I'm just talking for staff. Just what are you paying your head coach? What are you paying your assistant? How many assistant coaches you're allowed to have? What are you going to pay them? Just basic necessities on facilities. It was a joke. We used to be able to get away with it a long time ago. You can't get away with it now. Now, it's the kids want to know first, clearly the NIL, right? Then how many people have you put in the NFL? And then it goes, wow, that's a really nice weight room. That's a really nice indoor facility. And then, oh, by the way, your academics are great. If we're being honest, I think that's really kind of how the pecking order goes. We're brand new to this, and it sounds funny. I'd say we're 3 years into this where we're actually spending the money that our top 10, top 15 real program is spending. So I don't think you'll see the fruits of the labor of that for another year or two, personally.
I've always thought that post Butch Davis, I'll even include Larry Coker, because even though he won a championship and his record looks amazing, he obviously inherited a great situation. That up into Mario, I'm gonna put Mark Richt in like his own category, because
Correct.
He obviously was an excellent coach and did great things at Georgia that get forgotten. He finished in the top 10, 8 out of his 15 years at Georgia. So if there would have been a playoff when Mark Richt was around at Georgia, he would have been in the playoff like 4 or 5 times. So I'll put him in a different category, because I think it was obvious after he left Miami, unfortunately, that his health was compromised. I just don't think he was at his peak and ready to tackle this job. It appeared as though he was right out of the gate, but unfortunately, I just don't think he was up to it. So he obviously has been successful. But everybody else that Miami has hired, none of them were successful before Miami or after Miami. So they have all proven to be bad hires.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. We were talking about this the other day, and I thought it was kind of funny. If you look at, I mean, it's pretty common sense, but really look into the teams that are trending up in the last 5 to 7 years. A lot of the bigger name teams are Saban tree guys. Dan Lanning at Oregon, even though he walked into a nice situation. What's his name at Texas right now? Stark, right? Came into a little situation where Texas was a little rattling a little bit. Boom, 2-3 years later, won the college playoffs, right? I think Mario, when he left to go build Oregon, did a really good job at Oregon. Now he's at Miami. So I guess where I'm going with this is, it seems like Saban's tree is putting out quality coaches. And Kirby, I'm not even talking about Kirby. Kirby was easy too, right? He walked into a good situation, but he got him over the hump, and now they're arguably the number 1 program in the whole college football. And it's just interesting to me that it all points back to the Saban tree. And the reason I bring that up is because you're right. Mark Richt was probably the best quality coach we've had in a couple decades, and we got him on the way down. And I mean that respectively. We got him on the way down. He still got us a 10-win season, which is hilarious. I don't want to name other coaches because I don't like to do that, but it was an embarrassment. It really was an embarrassment. And you get what you pay for. I mean, you get what you pay for most of the time. If you're underpaying to hopefully hit a home run on a coach, don't get upset when it doesn't work, because he's going to have to underpay some of his assistants, which trickles down to the development. And as we spoke earlier, you can get a top 15 class, but so what if you don't develop them because you don't have the right coaches to develop? I am with you 100% on that, but I do believe, and I'm hard on my team. We got it right with Mario. I really think we got it right with Mario. I just feel that it was a little bit worse than people understand in the building. And I think we have to have a little more patience, which I haven't had much patience with prior coaches. I'll be honest. I'll put my hand up and, just really upset. I don't know how you can't win 8 games in the in the ACC. Just blows my mind. But I think we're getting it right because we're building it inside out. And it's the first time in a couple decades where it's being built inside out.
Folks, you have to excuse me here. So when I get somebody new on that knows what they're talking about, I like to go into the past. I know everybody's about what's going to happen this season and what's going to happen in 2025 with recruits, and I know that's where everybody's headed. But when I can get somebody like Miami Flo on here, this is the second time he's been on, and I've got questions about. I know the history. But I don't always know why did it happen the way that it did. And I always like to get a perspective because it's interesting to me. So here's another thought that I've got about that 2017 season is that I don't think in any way that they were up to Clemson's standards. However, they probably had the worst quarterback that they've had starting in
Oh, wow.
Pre-Jim Kelly. Like, I can't think of anybody. So if Brad Caius sticks around one more season, they're going to the ACC championship game 11-0. I got to think that they got one drive in them at Pitt to pull out that game that they lost.
Right.
So they go to the ACC championship game at 11-0, and then maybe they do have, even if they drop the ACC title game in a closer game, they have more of a special season, and maybe it catapults them into something else. And then again, maybe, and Mark Richt has a top 10 class. Again, unfortunately, he just wasn't up to the challenge because of his physical issues. So that may not have mattered. May just have been a one-hit wonder. But I always think of the what ifs and those sorts of things.
I'd like to chime in. I mean, when I've been blessed to be around the program pretty close for a long time, and any alumni that you can get that's played there was someone that, important, I would say. And if you can get them off the record, I would almost guarantee you they would echo what I'm about to say. We were never going to have permanent success until we cleaned out that administration. It was not going to happen. We might get a little excited, a little bit. 10 games. And even that season, some of those games we pulled out, we had no business winning, but we won them. So if you go back, there's 10 wins there, right? But there was some muddy games there that I don't think we deserve maybe to get through some of those games, to be honest, right? If we're being completely honest, I don't think we were a 10-game team, but we were on paper. So it depends on what side of the glass half full, glass half empty. But our inside that building was so anti-football that it wasn't. I never really felt excited that we were going to do anything that would have consistency or sustainability, because, again, we were not spending any money at all, so that you couldn't grow the program like most of the teams, even in the ACC. And I'm talking from the AD to some of the boosters to it was very difficult and frustrating, because I feel like a lot of people were enjoying that we're down because we were so flamboyant, arrogant when we were on top. And then, we got caught doing the corruption thing with that guy, and then we got sanctioned, and, it was like a domino effect after that. And then the school just was kind of scared to spend money and just did everything's safe. This is a safe guy. This is safe. Don't just run a football program. But we're getting stomped out year in, year out. So that's why I think you're seeing this kind of fresh, breath of fresh air a little bit, because it's so different this time. I don't know how it ends. I don't even want to try to get excited on it. But it's 100% different the way it's being done this time. So I'm hopeful, glass half full, like I said earlier, that it does end different because it's being built different. It wasn't a coincidence that our president left to the UCLA. It wasn't a coincidence who took over, right? It wasn't a coincidence that Alonzo came for a couple of years Heisman before we went back to the NFL to kind of clean up some things, right? It wasn't a coincidence that we went and took the AD from Clemson and bought his contract out and brought him over here, Radakovich, right? We went everything. All the non-sexy, the boring stuff was done first this time, which usually we used to do it ass backwards, excuse my language, But now there's you can withstand a blow. You can take a body blow. You can go 5-7 and 7-5, and the fans are like, but there's still money being pumped in. You're still going to get another top 10 class. And now your roster looks a little bit different from the inside out, kind of like the building. The building now is inside. The people in there that are making decisions are football people. And they've only been there a couple years, but they're football people. I believe that translates. Don't know when. I'm hoping soon, but I think it translates.
We appreciate Miami Flow being here. I want to make sure that everybody knows where to find you and what's going on over there. So what's the deal this week?
You got a muted on me, whatever you just said. Can you say it one more time?
Oh, my bad. Don't know.
No, I don't think it was you. I think it was on mine.
What's going on at your channel this week?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just saw your lips move. I didn't hear nothing. I think it was me. I hit the mute button. I come on every Sunday, and on Friday I do a drive. I call it the TGIF Live at 5, and we just do current events during the summer, just to kind of keep everybody up to speed. Clearly, we always do a little bit recruiting on the channel, but we just try to give the fans some content during the summer when everybody's losing their mind, hoping for fall to get here like yesterday. It's tough. It's tough. Like we were talking off the air. I know your schedule is incredible. I don't know how you keep up with it. I have a hard time just keeping up with my channel, so I can't even imagine how you do it. But yeah, we just try to give good content and make it accurate, and we get emotional. We have a great time on the channel.
Good stuff. Glad that we've connected. We've had some good conversations, so we appreciate you being here.
Appreciate it.
Mr. HD, we will win the state this year, Mark. What do you think about that?
Again, if we're talking on paper, I mean, we have a beast of a team. We should win the state this year. You know, we're playing Florida. We're playing Florida State. We're playing University of South Florida. And people laugh at University of South Florida, but anyone saw the bowl game that they had last year, and that quarterback's coming back. I mean, clearly on paper, we should be the favorite in all these games. But until we do it, I am going to take one game at a time. I'm going to try to I have PTSD. I always tell everybody of what's happening. So clearly on paper, I think we're good this year. But let's play the games. You know, I feel the Florida game is a monster game for us. So let's get by Florida, and then we'll talk.
We got about 10 minutes, I think, with you. So are you a video game guy?
I used to be, but I have an obsessive personality. So if I went back into that world, I would do nothing, and I probably wouldn't have money to even go shopping for food because I wouldn't leave my house.
It's good to be self-aware. So good for you. You know not to go in that direction.
And especially how beautiful those graphics look right now. I've seen all the clips, and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get away from this thing.
It's funny. My son, it's kind of, this surprises people. When he was about 16 and he was into video games, and he wasn't like he played baseball and he was outside a lot. Like it's not that he was like, you know, closed up in his room or in the basement all the time, but he loved video games. He came down, he's about 16 out of nowhere, just one day comes in, he's got it all stacked up. He's carrying all of it and says, "Dad, sell this, give it away, do it, get rid of it.
He's done.
It's too much, taking up too much of my time. It's not good for me. Get rid of it." You know, there are like 45-year-olds out there that aren't doing that.
Dude, I have a Discord, and they've started leagues in there. Like they have leagues that they're playing against each other. I mean, I think it's great. You know, I get into, you know, fantasy football. I like fantasy football, but I definitely can't. There's no way. I'd be so hooked, Mark. I'd be so hooked.
Yeah, I would be the same way. I have to get into something full throttle or I don't touch it. So that's how I would be too.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You get a chance to speak to all the different, you know, fan bases, and you see all the stuff. And I know you hear all what the national media is like, and you even have a channel for our school. What is your honest, not what they're saying, what's your honest take, seeing what he is kind of doing quietly, even though he didn't have the quick success with the results on the field from a wins and loss? What's your take on the direction that Miami's going?
So I still wrestle with Mario Cristobal as game manager, game preparation, and I'm not just pointing to the obvious last season.
Right.
That's going back to his Oregon days when I had some issues with that. So that is something that I hope he's addressing from the standpoint of his own self-awareness, reviewing his own preparation, or getting the kind of support and help that he needs around him. Because everybody, even if you've achieved to the very highest level of whatever industry it is, everybody has blind spots and strengths and weaknesses. And you just have to be able to recognize where you're not the best and have the proper support in that place. But everything else he's doing seems to be setting them up for success. When you consider, now we don't know what conference they're going to land in and what their future looks like in terms of that, which could somewhat change the challenges of trying to recruit a team that's in the Big 12, possibly, when you've got the likes of Notre Dame and Ohio State and whoever else comes into this state, Georgia and Alabama, obviously, and LSU and everybody else, in to take players, and then they're going to possibly use that against him. But if as long as everything stays somewhat competitive there and they're respected by the top level athletes, he's obviously a masterful recruiter, and the place recruits itself to us. I don't want to overstate that, but there are advantages in place because it's a sexy location. It's a desired location. There's a swag there that still exists for some. For others, they're 17 years old. They don't know what happened in 19.
They have no clue. Right.
But others, there's some kind of passing down of, okay, this is different here. This is why it's cool. This is why it's hip. Look into this. So I do think that should all be taken advantage of. And I think that he's a top 15 or 20 coach in college football is where I would rate him currently.
Fair.
Something in that range. And again, not that I didn't know it, because we certainly have conversations on here for an hour plus every week. And Cam does a great job giving context to a lot of things to make me understand. But, you gave me a layer to consider when I have been hard on him for these first two seasons, considering, okay, top 10 to 15 recruiting classes on this roster. I understand he's tearing it apart from the standpoint of the structure, the foundation, 5-7, 7-6, what's going wrong here. Mm-hmm. Not that I think that there should be major alarms going off or anything like that, but I'm also a historian of sorts. And I go through all these other successful coaches. And anytime you send a successful coach somewhere, it's difficult to find where it's taken a coach multiple years. Like Nick Saban hits campus, Urban Meyer hits campus, and it automatically, something changes. Not that they don't need to institute a lot of things and the recruiting takes a couple of years, but it's like, and not to you're talking about Saban's the greatest of all time and Urban Meyer's the best winning percentage of all time. You're talking about like the elite of the elite.
The GOATs, right.
But still, you have to go to like Bill Snyder at Kansas State where it was complete wasteland. And sure, it took him 5 years to start winning 9 and 10 games because they were winning 0 games, like 1 and 10, 2 and 11 kind of seasons every year. So it's difficult for me to find an example of a guy that didn't make an immediate impact who ultimately was successful.
The Florida State guy. He walked into an absolute shit show and he was bad for the first 2 to 3 years. Bad.
Yeah, 2020 and 21. So he had 2 bad seasons.
Yeah. And then he went a little bit, and then last year he had a really good season. I mean, but again, Mark, I know you got to go, but I think the game's changed with transfer portal and NIL now. You know, I mean, in both ways, meaning like you can lose a bunch of people or get a bunch of people real quick. This is the season for me to see if this is working or not. I think this is a result season for us, meaning it has to show in W's this year, or else then the alarm should go off. That's how I'm viewing it.
Absolutely. So what's a successful season for you?
For me, I'm a realist, and I know this is gonna sound crazy. 9 wins is a successful season for me. Everyone has us at 10. Even I can't understand it. I mean, we're all over national TV that we should at least win 10. That sounds great. I would love 10. I'll take 11, 12, whatever you want to give me. But if we can win 9 and the optics are solid, because optics matter nowadays, to me, that's a good enough jump where I'm like, we're going in the right direction.
No Clemson, no NC State on the schedule, no North Carolina on the schedule.
No, we have Louisville, Florida State, and Virginia Tech. Those are the ones that I think are going to be, because B Tech's going to be solid this year. And other than that, just show up. Just show up.
So understand what you're saying there, though, that 9-3 should be deemed a successful season, but that means they lose to everyone that has comparable talent.
Right. We got Florida too. We start with Florida in the swamp.
Florida, Louisville, Virginia Tech, Florida State.
Right.
Okay. 4 losable games.
In my opinion, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anybody else who could be a threat. Is there another Georgia Tech kind of?
Yeah, but I mean, it is. It's in Georgia Tech, but it would surprise me.
Yeah.
We played terrible last year in that game, and we still were lost because we don't know how to take a knee.
Yeah,
but
that's a whole game of like 3-1.
Yeah, that's a whole other story. And we're much better. But I mean, any game is losable when you're not Georgia, Ohio State, or like there's certain teams, right? For us, any game is losable. But we go 9-3. I'm not sounding the alarms. I still have one eye open though. Like a little bit. But we win 10. I'm feeling great because of the way the roster is being constructed. That's where my heart is. I think it's. And I've said it like 5 times, but I'll say it the 6th and I'll be quiet on it. He's building it inside out. And I think that's sustainable. When you can win in the trenches on both sides of the ball, you can sustain maybe not playing your best sometimes because you can stop the run and run the ball. And that's just my take.
One last take from me on that front. And just look at last year. They go 7-6. You can look at all the games that they lost and say they could have won all of them. But you can also look at some narrow wins against some pretty bad teams like Virginia.
Yeah.
When you're going to overtime against Virginia. So I think they landed pretty much where they played.
I don't disagree.
But this going forward next season, in addition to the record, I'm going to take it to the next degree and say, okay, 9-3, but they lost to Florida State by 3 touchdowns, and somebody else, there's going to be an evaluation.
Remember, optics. Like that would be bad. Like the optics, like you can't lose. That's what I'm right. It's got to look a certain way, in my opinion.
And for me, it's less about embarrassment. It's more about me evaluating how well they're playing.
Correct.
Not just the final score. Not just this looks bad because it looks bad because you can't lose to your rival by 3 touchdowns, but more like the evaluation of play. Like if the 9 wins also includes dominant victories versus they skated by. You talk about that 2017 season. If they're beating Georgia Tech, 19-17.
I agree.
On and on and on. Yeah.
Yep. No, I agree with you. I mean, a lot of people forget the Florida State game last year. We started a true freshman and lost by 7 points. And they were a juggernaut last year. So if they come to our home when we're supposed to be better and we get beat by 3 touchdowns, that's really bad. That's really bad. All right. That's what I meant by the 9-3 has to have certain optics for me. That's all. That's how what I meant. It has to look a certain way for me to be good with 9-3. That's all.
Absolutely. Miami Float, go join him specifically on Fridays and Sundays, right?
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Yes. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I love the show. I'm a big fan of what you do, and thank you again.
Well, thank you. Great conversations with you. I appreciate you going through the last 20 years with me because I enjoy those conversations in particular. So that's good stuff. So we hope to have you back here sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You too. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye, guys.
Just like to remind everyone here at the Voice of College Football that we've got a big day always planned here at the Voice of College Football. We've got Clemson live at 5:30. We've got West Virginia live at 8. And we've got USC call-in show at 10, all Eastern time. Clemson at 5:30, West Virginia at 8, USC at 10 right here at the Voice of College Football. My program rankings are coming out soon, and also my realignment fantasy. So be looking out for those videos over on the main channel, my realignment fantasy, but it's going to make sense. And then also our program rankings from 135 all the way up to number 1 right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here and appreciate your contributions. Please hit the like button on the way out, and we will see you soon.